Good evening. Welcome to Reflections on East Granby. Today's date is 10/20/2012. Our guest tonight is Thomas M. Carroll, a 28-year resident of East Granby. He was born on 8/14/46. He's 66 years old. Lives on Nutmeg Road in East Granby, and he'll be our guest tonight. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Mike.
How
nice
you doing?
To be here.
Yeah, same here.
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for coming on tonight. Okay, so you were. Why don't we start out like we do with every guest, and tell us a little bit about where you were from, where you were born, and a little bit about your history.
I was actually born in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
As my mother was from that area.
No kidding.
And we were living in the Washington D.C. area. My three sisters and brother and I.
Okay.
But my dad was on the road a fair amount for his job in the D.C. area. So my mother, knowing he was in and out of town, decided to go home so she'd have some support system. So I was actually born in my mother's hometown up in Gettysburg.
In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania?
I was, yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
A little history in that town.
Yeah, and with her being from there and our family visiting there a lot of summers, I got to know that general area very, very well.
Right.
And to this date, I probably have a keen interest in, the Civil War.
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah.
Beautiful part of the country.
Did you, what are your earliest memories of Gettysburg?
I think as a kid, because my mother's brother lived up there and had three sons, a couple of whom were right around my age. So I spent a lot of summers up there.
Okay.
When I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And my mother's mother lived up there. My mother was a Flynn, and my grandmother Flynn lived up there. And my earliest memories are a lot of summers in Gettysburg.
Okay.
Where on the 4th of July, as you can imagine, they had one of the really, really nice 4th of July activities, which when you're 8, 9, 10 years old seem even bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
Fireworks, the whole thing. And in 1960, at the 100-year centennial of the Battle of Gettysburg. Okay. In July 1st, 2nd, 1963. In 1963, the centennial of Gettysburg really, really did up great.
I bet, yeah.
With the reenactments and anything and everything involving the war.
So you were still living there at that point?
Well, I was living, again, I'd never lived there. I lived in Northern Virginia.
Okay,
DC.
right. You were just born there.
But we used to still go up summers and visit.
All right, okay.
So in 63, I was about 17 years old then. But we still went up for the enactment and, and the Civil War activities. Yeah.
So I missed a little point there, I guess. Where were you actually brought up?
I was brought up in right around Northern Virginia, about 10 miles from Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Yeah. My father was with the federal government for about 37 years.
What was the name of that town?
I grew up, first we lived in Arlington, then Falls Church, and then McLean, Virginia.
Boy, you're like a Civil War battle tour there.
Because McLean and Falls Church aren't far from Manassas, where, of course, the Battle of Bull Run took place.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Northern Virginia.
Okay. Yeah. So where did you go to school in? Yeah,
I ended up going to high school at Bishop O'Connell High School in Arlington, Virginia.
Was that a Catholic?
It was a Central Catholic high school. It took in 5 neighboring towns: Falls Church, Arlington, McLean, Vienna, and the grade schools from those towns sent their kids to the Central Catholic High School, Bishop O'Connell.
Okay.
Graduated from there in '64, and then I went to Mount St. Mary's College.
Did you go to parochial elementary school?
I did. Okay. I did. I went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, and then ended up going to Catholic college.
Okay.
As we, as youngsters, would drive up towards Gettysburg.
Yep.
There's a town called Emmitsburg, Maryland, which is just 10 miles from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, right on the border.
Okay.
And there's an old Catholic college there called Mount St. Mary's. It's the second oldest Catholic college in the United States after Georgetown in 1808. Right. So I went to Mount St. Mary's. I used to see it driving by to get to Gettysburg.
Okay.
And my grandmother Flynn in Gettysburg had 7 brothers.
Right.
All 7 of them went to the Mount.
Oh, no kidding.
So it was a family traditional type school, and I went there and graduated in ’68.
So you had a lot of family history in that area.
In that area.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So when you were growing up there, what were the I've never asked this question, but what were the Catholic schools like back then? Were they as strict as
they were very strict.
Reputation?
Yeah. But with all the books and the humor about the nuns, I had some fantastic nuns.
Yeah.
I mean, they were strict and they demanded a certain amount of good behavior.
Right.
But by the same token, I had some nuns that were absolutely terrific.
Okay.
The way they treated the kids and everything, and then so I didn't really have a problem. I had 1 or 2 who were very strict, but I think very fair.
As long as you behaved.
As long as you behaved, you didn't have a problem. But then I went to Bishop O'Connell High School, which is run by the Christian Brothers, which are renowned for teaching. They're not priests, but they're brothers.
Right.
They're a Catholic order of brothers, and their main goal is teaching, particularly at the high school level.
Okay.
Although the same order teaches and runs LaSalle College up in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But I went there for 4 years, and they were strict.
Is that Jesuits or is that?
No, they're just called Christian Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And they were strict, but fair. A lot of them helped coaching the sports teams and the like also.
Right.
And it was a good 4 years, and they pride themselves on preparing you. Basically, they want to prepare you to go to college.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
Do I have? Yeah, I have 3 sisters and a brother.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Are they still in that area? Or
No, right now I've got a brother in my brother's in West Virginia. I have a sister in Maryland, a sister in Atlanta, Georgia, and 1 sister left in Northern Virginia area. Yeah,
So
she just stayed there through the years.
Spread out a little bit.
Spread out. Yeah.
Okay, so you graduate high school. What do you do?
I went to the Mount St. Mary's to college. Got my bachelor's degree in history. Got drafted right away, 1968, with the Vietnam War.
Oh, that was the peak of the draft, wasn't it? Yeah.
If you could walk and talk at the same time, you get out of college in 60. At that time, they had what they call a 2S deferment. If you were a full-time student,
right,
you were deferred till you graduated.
Okay.
I called my draft board in March of 68, and so I knew I was graduating in June.
Right.
And they said, you'll definitely be drafted this summer. And they were. I got drafted, and I was gone in September of 68. I got drafted.
Really? So you were 2 months off and you were done?
They were close.
Yeah.
They were close. But in those days, the draft was mandatory 2 years.
Okay.
If you did just your 2 years, after everybody goes the same basic training, then they could tell you where you're going for what they called AIT, Advanced Individual Training.
Right, so they decide where you're...
They could tell you where you're going.
Right.
If when you got drafted, you said you'll stay for 3 years, you got to pick your own what they called MOS, Military Occupational Specialty,
right,
which could be anything from engineering, clerk typist, military intelligence, supply school. So I decided I'd get some training, and I chose military intelligence. So when I got out of basic training, which is at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, because I had agreed to give them 3 years instead of 2, at least I knew where my advanced individual training next would be, as opposed to them saying you're going there.
So a lot of people would sign up for 3 years, I would assume.
A lot of the guys I got drafted with in 68, coming out of college, a huge percentage of us said, we're here for 2 years anyway, we'll do the 3rd year and get some training.
Right. I
don't regret it. The Army Intelligence School at that time was in Fort Holabird, Maryland.
Okay.
16 weeks.
Okay.
Monday through Saturday, classroom, more combat training, more firearms training, interviews, interrogations, military code, uniform code of military justice, search and seizure, everything of this nature. It was a good program.
What did they actually teach you?
Interviews and interrogations, surveillance techniques, more proficiency in hand-to-hand combat, more proficiency in using firearms.
Right.
Anything you're going to use in intelligence work.
So this is pretty generic training. I mean, they're covering the whole spectrum. It's kind of like basic intelligence.
It is. It's exactly what it is. And the instructors were all career military intelligence officers.
So what were they trying to? Oh, I'll let you finish. What were they trying to do with that?
Well, at that time, the Vietnam War was obviously in high gear, but at that time it wasn't. But also at that time, we still had 350,000 troops in Germany because of the Cold War.
Right.
So that was a 16-week course, and there were groups that went through before us. There were 50 men in a class. Okay. Now it's men and women because of obviously the military since '68 when I was there. '69 has really evolved obviously to where we have our men and our women. But at the end of week 15, they gave you your orders where you were going anywhere in the world. Okay. Well, they came in with the 50 in our class. 10 went to Vietnam. 10 went to Germany. I was in that group. Right. 10 went to South Korea because we still had an awful lot of troops in South Korea at that time. So, 10 went to other places in Europe, and 10 stayed in the United States. So I was sent to Frankfurt, Germany. Wow. I had a little over 2 years left by the time I had finished basic in the Army Intelligence School. So my last 2 years and 3 months in the Army I spent in Frankfurt with a military intelligence that was based in Frankfurt, Germany.
And what were you doing?
There's a mixture.
I don't know how much I suppose now it's really classified.
A lot of it was then, some of it still is now, but a lot of what the Army Intelligence investigators did in those days was we would follow up leads if we got information, perhaps someone candidly, be it an Army, someone in the U.S. Army, or we employed German civilians also to assist in various things, be it in the motor pool or anywhere else. Right. And if we got information that someone was in fact dealing with the other side, the communists, the East Germans, Czech intelligence, Hungarian intelligence.
So your job was to secure your own.
It was basically
perimeter, and for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
you were trying to
secure information, our own
yeah.
intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And investigate anybody that might perhaps candidly be giving away some information.
Keep an eye on your own troops, basically.
And we conducted background investigations too on people who were going to be going into key positions in our own military. Someone has to upgrade those background investigations. We would do that.
Interesting.
So
That must have been interesting.
It was
to be able to do that.
And I was very fortunate because the officers, the career officers I reported to, I got a couple of really good years of training. Anything and everything, from interviews, interrogations, surveillance technique, and everything. And so it was very good.
What was the most interesting thing that you experienced in that couple of years?
I would say probably we had a tech unit that was very adept. These guys had gotten drafted like us also agreed to give them a third year and end up in military intelligence, but they're very good at gadgetry and anything.
So like listening devices?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that
James Bond stuff
that I found most fascinating was that even back then in the late 60s, early 70s, we had a lot of, maybe not as sophisticated as today, obviously, but we had a lot of good equipment for purposes of if you needed to do, say, a discrete surveillance.
Really?
And they would make one of the guys in tech. Remember, I had to interview a guy, and all they wanted really was to somehow get a picture of this guy.
Good.
And the tech unit was good enough just to give me a little binder or book to carry in during the interview, and they managed to secure a camera in there so if I could take his picture.
So that's very James Bondy.
Yeah, and I think back. I mean,
putting cigars or anything?
Yeah, no, but it was good training. It was good training, and I came to appreciate the dedication of our men and women in uniform.
Yeah.
Then and now. I really, as a veteran myself, I appreciate the sacrifice. I was fortunate because with the Vietnam War going on, most of us knew you're probably going to Vietnam or Germany.
Right. With
some going to Korea.
Right.
Because still we had forces there since '53 when that war ended.
Right.
But
they're still there.
I was fortunate into ending up in Frankfurt, the nature of the training and the work I got involved in.
Right.
And my best friend who went into, got drafted with me. I went to high school and college with him, and he went to Army Intelligence School with me after basic. He was amongst one of those 10 who went to Vietnam out of that class. Okay. And then, as I say, the rest of us went other places.
So that was probably was that viewed as a better assignment?
Yeah, I think obviously, you know, from a standpoint of the if you went to Vietnam, even if you were in an Army Intelligence Unit, or no matter what your military occupational specialty was, Vietnam was Vietnam.
Right.
Certainly in the combat
war
zone.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cold War in Germany, a lot of it was whether you were in an intelligence unit or you were in a supply unit or you were in a transportation unit. Right. A lot of it was just maintaining the East German, West German border. Right. The big fear in those days was that if war were to break out, and the East Germans came over the line into West Germany, the main reason for most of the U.S. soldiers being there at that time was because basically we were protecting the East German, West German border. Right. As I say, we had about 350,000 troops there.
It's amazing when you think of that.
Yeah. I just went back this past summer.
Did you really?
To see my old Army base there. I hadn't been back since '71 when I got out, and I went back this summer, 2012.
What was that like?
And the front is still the same. Really? Which was a brick facade. Yeah. And then it had a tunnel you drove through, and the 165th MI company, Military Intelligence Company, you went up these stairs to get there. And there was a big hallway full of the offices. That's now German businesses up in there. And the inside, where on one side was a stockade and the other side was a motor pool, the other was a transportation unit. That's all German businesses inside there now.
Oh, no kidding. So they put it to good use.
Yeah. But it was neat after 41 years going back.
I bet. It's going to be a blast from the past.
It was. It was.
You know, it just strikes me. I mean, that must have been a fascinating place to be for you.
You know, it was really interesting. I was 22 years old when I got drafted, just out of college. And I look back at that, and I think to this day, I got a lot of good training. I bet. The 16-week course itself was fantastic. These are career intelligence officers teaching every aspect of investigative work, particularly intelligence investigative work. And I felt like, geez, I mean, I may have gotten drafted, but I think I got some very good training. I did.
Well, it certainly gives you some formal direction in your life, you know. I mean, and some discipline, I guess. I mean, it sounds like you were always a good student, but it doesn't, you know.
I did all right. I was probably what you call your basic B student. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
And my sisters and brother probably did better than I did. Yeah. You know? But I got my Bs and some As in certain things. You know.
Yeah. So you're in Germany for 2 years?
Yeah.
What happened when you came back? Where'd you go?
Well, interestingly enough, when I was over there and I was getting this training in investigative work, when I got out, I wanted to do one of two things. I either wanted to continue in investigative work,
okay,
or go into teaching.
Right.
There were, at that time, when I was there, 69 to 71, there were about 5 colleges, U.S. colleges, who had extension courses at Rhein-Main Air Base outside Frankfurt.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
it was only 15 miles away from my base. Well, one of them was the University
So you could start on your studies back to the States.
Absolutely.
That's a great, yeah.
So the University of Southern California had a master's degree program in education.
Okay.
And from the middle of 69 until the middle of 71, for about 2 years, I went to night school and got my master's degree in education.
Oh, great.
Through the University of Southern California. But the professors were actually from their home campus in Los Angeles, and they would come over and do a 2-year stint. So I was fortunate enough to get a lot of the actual staff that were at their home campus in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's great.
So before I left, I was able to get my master's in education.
While you were in the military?
Well, yeah, before I got discharged in August. I was able to finish it.
So you get your master's in 2 years?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I went for a while, 2 nights a week, 3 hours a night from 7 to 10.
Right.
To finish it, the last 6 months, I went 4 nights a week from 7 to 10, take courses, so I could finish it. I didn't want to be up, come up a few credits short. So 4 nights a week, I was going to night school the last 6 months I was on it.
And how old were you when you left? When you graduated?
25.
So 25 years old, you did your stint in the military. You'd already gone to college.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You already had your degree.
Right.
That's I forgot about that. Yeah. So you got your master's degree. So you leave the military after 2 years with your 3 years.
3 years.
3 years total. With your master's degree, that's a great place to start life, huh?
Yeah, and when you're on active duty, the military picked up 75% of the cost because I was on active duty.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Which was very nice. The credit hours were the same as if you had been back in Los Angeles going to the University of Southern California's home campus. So for them to pick up 75% because you're an active duty military person was very good.
Now, was the education degree a generic education degree, or was there a discipline that you were?
It was just called Master's Degree in Education.
Okay.
It was basically geared more towards secondary level.
Okay.
Junior high, high school.
Yeah.
But some of the courses, educational administration, testing, tests and measurements could be used at any level.
Okay.
But it was geared more towards secondary level. It was.
Okay, so you leave Mannheim and you come back to the States. Where do you go with your master's?
I had applied to about 10 law enforcement and investigative agencies because of my background there, and I applied.
You were still keen on pursuing that, yeah.
And I applied to about 15 or 20 different boards of education looking for a job.
Right.
And I got one offer, and it was to teach junior high school, they used to call it, 8th grade in Glen Burnie, Maryland.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so I ended up taught American history for a year.
So you put in 25, 30 applications, you got one offer?
One. Even then, as bad as the job market is today, it was bad back then for a lot of us. 71 coming
Certain
out.
disciplines, I think.
And there was not a lot of hiring going on. I got letters such as, there's a freeze here, we're not hiring,
Really?
So I came back and taught 8th grade U.S. history for a year from September 71. I had just gotten out of the Army in August.
Glen Burnie, Maryland?
Yeah, I'd only been out of the Army 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Went down to the school, picked up my history books, and 3 weeks later went down there and started teaching.
It's a junior high.
Junior high.
Yeah, 8th grade's an interesting age to teach.
It was a very interesting age. You had everyone from 4'10" to 6'5".
Yeah. Everybody doesn't kick in at the same time.
It was some of them, their voices hadn't changed, and some of them were bigger than I was.
Yeah.
It was really an interesting
Middle
year.
school.
But while I was there, I had applied to all these law enforcement agencies,
right?
And I got an offer from what was and is still called the Postal Inspection Service. So they're actually the oldest federal law enforcement agency in the country.
No kidding.
Yeah, Ben Franklin formed them. He called them postal agents, and it was to guard the sanctity of the seal, the mail.
Right.
If you remember Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, when they robbed the mail off the train. If you ever see the end of the movie and they Butch and Sundance turn around and say, "Who are those guys?" Chase them on horseback. Those were postal inspectors.
The ones in Argentina?
Yeah. Well, ones in the States that chased them over the border.
Oh, okay. They chased them
because they had robbed the mail off the train.
Oh, okay. So you were one of those guys.
Yeah, I was back. I did that.
Horse.
So I left teaching after 1 year.
Yeah. Okay.
And, with mixed emotions because I kind of enjoyed it, but I wanted to try it.
Yeah.
And the postal inspectors, my dad had been an FBI agent for a while.
Okay.
And I knew the federal agencies would move you wherever they're going to move you.
Right.
So I went through their training in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
That was a 3-month training school. More interviews, interrogations, criminal law, search and seizure, arrest procedure.
Some more civil stuff.
And after you go through that, you're aware they can send you anywhere in the United States. And they sent me to New Haven, Connecticut.
No kidding.
And that's how and that was in January of '73.
Okay.
And I've been in Connecticut since 1973 now.
Where'd you meet your wife?
Actually, I met my wife later through the job. And she was with the Postal Service. Yeah, actually in the Hartford, Springfield area.
Okay.
But that's how we ended up in New Haven.
So we share it with the audience.
Pam. Yeah. And she spent 34 years in the post office.
Okay, so you're both
her last 20, she was postmaster in East Granby.
Some of the most stable people I know.
She was postmaster in East Granby from '84 to 2004.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. She had 13, 14 years in before she became a postmaster. So she did 34 years, and then she retired.
Okay, so what was that job like? Your
postal inspectors was an interesting job.
Yeah.
You do mail fraud, you know, the schemes, you know, a lot of them, at that time the ads were sent through the mail.
Right.
And the mail fraud statute is very broad. If you, the statute basically says if you orchestrate a scheme to defraud you or anybody, and the U.S. mails are used or even caused to be used, then you have violated the mail fraud statute, which is an automatic federal felony. There's no misdemeanors in it.
Oh, wow.
So I did a lot of mail fraud cases. The post also do what they call external crimes. If someone burglarizes a post office, which years ago, before they were all burglarized, there were a lot of burglaries.
Oh, really?
Assaults on postal employees, break-ins to mail vehicles.
Anything involved with the post.
Yeah.
It was like your own little country.
Exactly.
In some
There's
ways.
85 postal laws, and we investigate any of those 85 violations of any of them.
Really?
But I did that for 11 years, 5 in New Haven. Was sent to Hartford for 6 years.
Okay.
But then after 11 years with them, I got another transfer, and I knew they did move you to Chicago, and I didn't want to move again. And I was living here in East Granby and loving it. So the insurance industry hires people with law enforcement investigative background to do insurance fraud and auto theft investigations for these.
Okay.
Obviously, being here in Hartford,
there's a lot of opportunities there.
And a lot of the mail fraud cases I had worked for those 11 years with the postal inspectors, a lot of them were insurance frauds.
Really?
Because if someone sends in a bogus claim and they use the mails to mail it,
really, that's automatically
you find out the claim is fraudulent, they violated the mail fraud statute. Really? So insurance investigators send a lot of their cases to the postal inspectors for the prosecution with the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Because of your efficiency, or just because?
Well, because they have the statute.
Okay.
The postal inspectors have the mail fraud statute.
Right.
So if an insurance fraud investigator in any of the companies feels that his company or her company's been defrauded,
right?
You know, bogus claims or the like. They can take their information, and to get the prosecution, because they're a private sector insurance company,
right.
The appropriate law enforcement agencies, the postal inspectors, because they have jurisdiction over the mail fraud.
Okay, so that's their venue of.
The claim went through the mail. That's one count of mail fraud.
Okay.
If they didn't catch it and actually mailed the check for the bogus claim, that's 2 counts of mail fraud, and each one carries 1 to 5 years. So
wow.
U.S. Attorney's Office loves it because it's such a broad statute, and she's not just for insurance fraud. She's
from a prosecutorial standpoint. It's pretty easy.
And that's why it gets so much play. The FBI does mail fraud now too. Originally the statute belonged to the postal inspectors, but candidly there's so much out there that the FBI will start out in some of their cases maybe under bank fraud or wire fraud.
Right.
And if it goes over into mail fraud, there's plenty of work for everybody. So we never had a problem with the fact that the statute was being worked not just by the postal inspectors but by the Bureau. I mean, there's more work than you can.
It's not like a turf battle. It's more like who can do it the most efficiently.
There's plenty of work. Yeah. So I did that from 80. I got transferred to Chicago with them in postal inspectors in '84.
Right.
And from '84 to 2006, I retired at the end of '06. I did insurance fraud and auto theft investigations.
Okay. So you did your 20 years in the post office, or did you?
Only 11 before I got transferred to Chicago.
Okay, so you bailed.
Yeah.
And did your wife stay working for the post office?
Actually, she retired at the end of '05, and I retired at the end of '06.
Okay, but she stayed with the post office.
Yeah, she just stayed. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Now you went from there to the insurance. Now, why don't we jump back to where you were at that point? You come to New Haven to work.
'73.
And where do you live?
In Branford, Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah. Then Madison, and then up here. Yeah, to New Haven or to the Hartford.
So when you get transferred to the Hartford office, you bought a house in East Granby?
Yeah, shortly thereafter. Was in Springfield for a while.
Okay.
A year or two, and then into East Granby. Yeah.
Okay. How'd you find East Granby?
When my wife became postmaster in East Granby in 1984, they had a rule in the Postal Service that postmasters had to live in the town where they were postmaster to be active in the community.
Okay.
So when Pam started bidding on postmaster jobs, we picked towns that were appealing. And East Granby
you don't want to get a job in a town you don't want to live in, right?
So then you have to go through the interview process.
Right.
So she bid on a couple towns, and she didn't get them, and then she bid on East Granby, and in '84 she got hired.
Oh, good.
We were living up the road in Springfield, so we just moved here in '84 to fulfill that provision, and I'm happy that it worked out. I love East Granby. Yeah.
What was your first impression of East Granby when you rolled into town?
I loved it. Absolutely, then and now.
So Pam calls and tells you that, hey, I just bid on this job and I think I got it. You better go check out the town. Is that how
Yeah, really. Yeah. That's exactly what happened. So they usually give you about 6 months to move there once you're made a postmaster.
Okay, yep.
So we would come down and we, I got hold of a realtor and we said, we're obviously going to buy in East Granby,
right?
Which was fine with us anyway. And we found our house on Nutmeg Road, and we've been there 28 years now.
Yeah,
love it. Yeah, great town.
What was your impression of the town when you first rolled in?
I liked it for two. I liked it because it was small.
Yeah.
And I happen to like small towns.
Right.
I just think they're still a throwback, and I just enjoy getting to know the community, the people in the town, everything about it.
Yeah.
I like the where it's sat. I mean, you can get to Springfield, you can get to Hartford, you can go to Boston.
Right.
You can get up to Vermont, the Vermont border in an hour and a half.
Right, right.
And I just thought it was a really pleasant community, and we liked it right away.
And what year was that again?
84.
84, okay.
Right.
So you bought your house on Nutmeg Road, and where you were still working at the Hartford Post Office, so you wasn't too bad. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. In 84
you were
is when I left, because I got transferred to Chicago and I went over to the insurance industry.
Okay.
Doing insurance fraud and auto theft from 84 to 2006.
Let's digress for a minute. Do you have any interesting investigative stories to share? The ones that you find yourself repeating to people?
No, there were a lot of strange ones.
I'm just saying if there's anything that bubbles up.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting ones was actually not one that I was personally involved in, but around 75 or 76. And I went with them in 73. I was still in the New Haven office. And in the middle 70s, there was a bomb went off in the Boston post office.
Okay.
And one of the things they teach you during bomb training is obviously you got to secure the area.
Back then they were actually blowing up post offices.
Yeah. And when that bomb went off in the Boston post office, I could be wrong on this. I think one person might have died. I'm not certain. But there were a lot of people injured.
People forget about it.
In conjunction with a bomb investigation, they obviously cordoned off the area, and they wanted to pick up any and all evidence. Well, it turned out that one of the pieces of evidence they found was a partial stamp, that there was actually a thumbprint on it. And that's nice, but you've got to have someone to match it to. Because it isn't like on TV, although they've become more accurate.
It's a little bit more.
In depicting how these things play out. There was a postal inspector in Worcester, Massachusetts, getting ready to retire at that time, a fellow by the name of Joe Daly, who was loved by everybody.
Right.
And Joe had a lot of informants out on the street.
Okay. He'd been doing it for a while.
And shortly after that bomb went off, one of his informants came in to see Joe, and he said I was at a bar last night, Joe, having a couple beers, and there was this guy a few seats down from me talking about that bomb that went off. And he said, Joe, he was talking about some very specific things. He said he's got to have some knowledge of this.
Right.
Joe said, do you know his name? He said, yeah. Well, Joe ran and luckily there was a record on this guy.
He had a print.
He had prints because of his rap sheet.
Oh, no.
They sent it to, and again, give credit, we had one of our lab people was a fellow by the name of Jim Upton in those days. He was the chemical specialist and things like that. He was able to match that fingerprint of that guy against the partial fingerprint on the
no kidding.
On the stamp.
Wow.
And that's how they convicted him.
That's amazing.
By securing the evidence and finding part of a stamp that had enough identifiable points.
Classic case of really good, thorough police.
Long before CSI.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, when they're picking through all those pieces, it's got to be real easy to miss something like that.
Yeah.
But they caught it. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, there were some interesting things, and it was an interesting line of work.
I bet.
It was.
What was the primary investigations in insurance fraud? Was people just not claiming fraud?
Two or three different things.
Yeah.
The one the most generic is probably claim fraud.
Okay.
Someone claims his or her car is stolen, reports it's stolen, collects say $14,000 depending on the year, make, or model. when in actuality the car is stored at his cousin's house 15 miles away.
Oh, really?
So the claim went through the mail,
Yeah.
one count of mail fraud.
Right.
The check comes back, another count of mail fraud.
Right.
Subsequently, they find out through investigation that the car was never actually stolen. So,
Right.
of course, it's insurance fraud. But for the prosecutive criminal prosecution, it constitutes mail fraud.
Right.
Claim fraud's big. Candidly, workers' comp fraud's very big in this country.
Yeah,
Huge,
yeah.
big issue. Medical fraud's a big issue.
Right.
Everything from the patients to, providers, to anybody, middlemen. Insurance fraud is really only limited by a person's imagination,
Yeah,
Arsons are big.
So you run the full gamut.
Yeah.
And did you
absolutely.
investigate all those sorts of things, or did you
Yeah.
guys find a specialty that one guy was better at than another?
For the first 15 years or so, I did just about anything and all types of investigations.
Okay.
And then for 3 or 4 years, I did mostly medical fraud.
Okay.
And then went back the last 5 or 6 years doing more just about anything and everything, with even probably more on auto theft.
Really?
And what they call staged accident rings. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
No.
Staged accident ring are these people that they get 4 or 5 people, and they suddenly right in front of you, Mike, and cause you, you
To
hit
hit 'em.
at 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You may do $50 worth of scratches to the back of the bumper, but they all get out with alleged soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
All of them, and they go
We
through.
won't get into that, but I had that
doctor and
happen
lawyer.
once where it wasn't. I don't think it was staged. There was a lot of moaning at 4 miles an hour.
But there's rings that do that for a living.
Oh, they actually admit that's how they make.
The same 5 or 6 people.
That's got to show
different
up
names.
in a database, though.
Well, it does. And I'll tell you, when those things, they've been epidemic for 30 years. First started hitting in the early 70s. The databases weren't as efficient
So it
as
took
they
a
are
while
now.
to catch up.
Now, if you've got someone that's involved in that type of thing, yes, you can check to see. If the same name addresses are showing up,
Yeah.
it's become, the investigative techniques have become more sophisticated, right? But there was a lot, there was, and there still is a lot of that type of thing.
So it's going to be a fascinating job, though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I retired at the end of December of '06.
Okay.
And in the back of my mind was getting back into education and doing something along that
Which you've
line.
done.
Which, so I've been, I started out as a sub here in town. A couple
Let's
weeks
jump
at high
back just a
school.
little bit.
Yeah.
Do you have any children?
Yep, 4 boys.
Okay, where were they born? In Connecticut? They were...
Yeah, 3 in New Haven and 1 in Springfield.
Okay.
And they're all grown now.
Where did they go to school?
My oldest son went to William and Mary down in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Okay.
Then he
For
got
college.
Yeah. Then he got his MBA from Yale.
Yeah.
And he went in the workforce for 5 years after he graduated, and then decided to go back and get his MBA. And he applied to a lot of schools. Was fortunate enough to get into Yale's MBA program.
Okay.
And he's working in business in New York City now.
Did they go to school, elementary school in Connecticut, or did...
Yeah, different town.
Yeah.
But then my second son's a high school teacher down in Maryland.
Right.
He went to Boston College, and he has his master's degree now in education. He's a high school English teacher and coach.
Interesting. Yeah.
My third son got his master's in, he went to Providence College in Rhode Island, got his bachelor's in psychology, started out doing hospital work.
Right.
From the time he was a little boy, he always wanted to paint. So he went back and got his master's in fine arts. So
Good for him.
He's a painter, and he and his
nice
wife.
to hear stories like where people actually follow their passion.
And he's living in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
He's engaged. He's getting married next May.
Okay.
And his wife finished medical school a year ago, and she's doing her residency at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. So they're living in Atlanta.
She's going to pay for the paint.
Yeah. Well, they both have student loans because our soon-to-be daughter-in-law borrowed the money to go to medical school.
Oh, okay, all right.
And Brendan, my third son, Ainsley, my son Brendan and Ainsley, who are getting married in May, he borrowed the money for his master's.
Right.
So he hasn't been able to break into the art field down there, job situation being what it is. But he's still painting, and he's joined a community of artists. He's had 1 or 2 gallery showings down there, giving his paintings out.
Yeah.
And our fourth son, Mike, he did a double major in math and physics at Binghamton University over in Binghamton, New York.
Okay.
And he is now in New York City in the business world, and he's studying to be an actuary. He's passed 6 of the 10 exams.
There's an awful lot of actuaries out there.
No, he kind of fell into this. He was a math major. And so he got this job 5 years ago for a company in New York that works up pension funds and health benefits for other companies. It's an old company. It's about 70 years old, and they hire a lot of math majors. And Mike's been with them 5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's using his math. And his boss is an actuary. So when he first got there 5 years ago, he encouraged Mike to start taking the actuarial exams, whether he wants to be an actuary the rest of his life or not.
Yeah, right.
But the first 5 are exams.
Not a bad notch to have on your belt.
No, he said those first 5 exams were the hardest tests he ever took in his life.
I've heard it's a very difficult discipline.
And he was good at math.
Yeah.
Not because he's Mike's son, but Mike was really good at math. But he said they were hard. And 6 through 10 are what they're projects. They give you a problem, an actuarial problem, and he passed number 6, so he's got 4 more to go, and then he'll get the designation of an actuary.
Yeah, it's quite it's almost like a residency type thing, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah, like a hospital.
Because you can only take 2 of those tests a year.
Right.
There's 10 of them, so you can't even do it in less than 5 years.
Right.
And his boss told him, I think it was number 4 or 5, told him that this one separates the men from the boys.
Oh, really? That's where he loses.
And he didn't pass it the first time.
It's like SEAL training.
Yeah, he told him that. The company paid for him to take the exam the first time, and he didn't pass it, so he paid it. But he did pass it the second time.
Yeah.
But Mike said, I was glad to pass it the second time. There were guys that tried it 4 or 5 times.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I guess they get a little harder as they go on.
Yeah, well, it seems to be a fairly good job once you get there.
Yeah, if you get there.
And so I can imagine the more applicants you have for a job, usually the more difficult they make it to get through the hurdles. You know? So, anyway, that's great. What are your other sons' names? Mike?
Matthew, Matt, Josh is the teacher, Brendan is in Atlanta, and Mike. Yeah.
Okay. So they're grown and they're on their way.
Yeah,
so.
Matt's married. Our oldest been married 2 years, and Brendan and Mike are both getting married next year, 2013.
You're gonna have a busy year.
Gonna be a busy year.
You'll be doing some flying around the country.
We'll have 3 of the 4 married this time next year. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's anybody deserves a pat on the back. 4 degrees and 3 out of 4 married. That's pretty good.
Yeah, we're proud of it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in East Granby. You moved to town, and you're doing your commuting, and your wife's working as a postmaster. What were the first few years you were here? What were they like? What were your...
Very good.
Yeah.
Again, because I think I like the small town feel.
Yeah.
So much, growing up in the D.C. area.
So it was a good fit for you.
It was really good because I think part of it was going back to, with my mother being Gettysburg, a small town, spending summers there. I like the small town feel.
Yeah.
Well, where I grew up in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia.
That's a metropolis. Huh?
Yeah, and expanded, and no land is left. Everything's a strip mall or a condo. And
it's not quite New Jersey, but it's pretty close.
It got
nicer.
It just got overdeveloped, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? And East Granby to me is I prefer the small town, less congestion. People get to know each other.
Yeah.
And where the town, as a town resident, you get some say in it. Mike, with the town meetings we have here.
There's a lot of interaction if you want to take advantage of it.
Whereas on a county-run basis, like where I grew up in Fairfax County, I can't imagine having anything like a town meeting like we have here.
It's more of a bureaucracy, isn't it? More of a corporation almost.
So I found it very appealing. The other thing I really found appealing here was when we moved to East Granby, I didn't move here for this reason, but I found out shortly thereafter that like our high school, by enrollment, was the smallest one in the state.
Right.
When our son Mike graduated in 2001, there were 51 kids in the senior class. 51 kids. Well, my parents paid to send me to a Central Catholic high school.
Right.
We had 33 kids in a class.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good.
Yeah.
But there was nothing like I remember Mike taking AP math courses here at East Granby High School, and there were like 3 and 4 kids in a couple of those classes.
It's more like it's definitely a private type.
And I used to say to people before I retired, and I'm in Hartford, I said, geez, I live in this little town of East Granby. And I said, you talk about a small school, it's almost like sending your kid to a private school.
Yeah.
He got a great education from kindergarten right on up through senior in high school, because he was the one who ended up going right through the system. And I was just a big fan then and now.
Right.
And we all know East Granby's doing well, statewide, academically, competing with other towns. But I think what I'm getting at, the smallness of the community and of the school system, very appealing.
Right.
And I like that. I like that a lot.
So you were very happy with the experience you had in that regard.
Absolutely.
Now, did you? What was the biggest surprise about the town? Was there anything that you were kind of? I mean, the school sounds like that was kind of you weren't really.
I can't really say. I think because we came here to look at homes, I had a pretty good idea.
You knew what you were getting into.
Yeah, I kind of knew the area. Even before we moved here, knew just from traveling around the area. And if it was a surprise, without being sappy, I'd say I found it even welcoming and more appealing after I lived here a while and got to know our street and our neighbors and people in the school and people around town and the businesses.
Yeah.
I found it even more of a good old-fashioned small town America environment. And again, not to be sappy, but I find that very appealing. You know,
it definitely is. I mean, it's a manageable town.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, what strikes me, what kind of off of what you're talking about, is the fact that one individual can do a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can get involved in a cause or a group or an event and really be a leader.
Yeah.
Very easily if you just engage yourself. You
Absolutely.
know? Whereas a lot of the bigger ones, it's almost like a political battle just to be involved.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you have the 20. How many years? 28 years in town. What's the biggest change you've seen in town then since you've been here? See, 84 was, you were fairly developed already. So what is the?
I think probably Route 20. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I mean, you're an East Granby resident yourself, so. But I remember Route 20 between East Granby and Granby.
Yeah.
Where if there were 25 cars on the road, you'd say, wow, look at the traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm not a dinosaur. Development's going to happen in, you know.
Oh, yeah.
But what hits me is the traffic flow now on Route 20, particularly 4:30, 5 o'clock.
You have a real rush hour.
But you know, people, you know, as Avon and Simsbury and Farmington and those towns, you know, perhaps a little pricier housing, people started looking more at Granby, East Granby, and why not? It's beautiful up here.
Yeah.
But we've grown both towns. But I think looking at what hits me, I kind of chuckle, is at 4:30 or 5 o'clock now on Route 20 between East Granby and Granby. It's different than it was, to answer your question, when I first came here.
Was it really?
Yeah. And but a couple other major changes. Late 90s, or actually, I know Mike graduated in 01. We're just getting the provisions through for the high school to do some improvements at the high school. The latest thing with Seymour and Allgrove, I think, is wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, to upgrade those two schools.
Right.
But one of the things that I like that stayed basically the same is that we haven't, as a town, overdeveloped, and this is one of the things, candidly, that turned me off about Northern Virginia, where I grew up. I think they're just overdeveloped. The traffic down there is absolute chaos around Northern Virginia, the Beltway, night or day.
Yeah.
I like the fact that we've stayed small enough in East Granby, despite my kidding about Route 20, to where, if you think about it, we're what are we, around 4,500, 5,000 people, something like that.
5,000, a little over 5,000.
And even out on North Main, Mike, we haven't overdone it. Some homes, you know, I really like the fact that we've maintained our smallness. So I just, that's me, you know. I just don't like congestion. So
I think
like
the
that.
sentiment that you're expressing is why it's still that way, because I think the majority of people in town do like it that. They don't want to see this massive change, you know. They're open to certain things, but you know.
Yeah, I like it.
Controlled development, but they don't want to see any big strip malls and you know, metropolitan type development. So so those are the biggest changes. Is there anything about the town that, if you had Tom Carroll gets a magic wand for one night, what would you change?
Oh wow.
You can do, and I always preface that by saying, if you didn't have to pay to maintain it, or you know what I mean. If you'd like to see one thing in the town that you think, I mean, you've lived in different places. Is there anything you would add to the town? Or change or?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I would say one thing I would like to see, and I don't hide this. I'm not. I'm very pro school, pro education. So to answer your question, as the needs arise for physical improvements of any of our schools, elementary through to high school, I'd like us as a town to rally behind that. I admit that. As needs arise, I'm a big fan of the teachers in this town. I think they not only teach the kids, they take care of our kids in this town. And as the needs arise to appropriately pay those teachers, I'm all for that. We should do that. So I'm just saying that it hits me as needs arise, be it for our professional personnel or physical buildings, that we continue to do that as a community. You know, and I'm just one of these that thinks it's money well spent if you put it in those areas, and that's just my own personal opinion.
And we should do. What do you do now for a job?
I'm actually, so my previous statement sounds a little biased, but again, I won't apologize for that. When I retired at the end of '06, As I say, I taught years ago for a year, and I gone back to graduate school in education, and in March of '07, after I took just January and February of '07 on retire.
Right.
And my wife Pam said, they're looking for subs here in town, which I said, yeah. So I applied in March of '07. They do the fingerprint and little check. And I started subbing here in East Granby in March of '07.
Yeah.
And I did that, I was at the high school, I was at Seymour, the middle school. But around April of '07, they asked me if I wanted to try Allgrove with the younger kids.
Little kids, yeah.
One of the teachers was going to be out for 3 or 4 days, and for continuity, they said, you want to come down, we'll have one person handle that class rather than 3 different subs. So I said, sure. Went down there and loved it.
Yeah.
And I've never left.
Yeah, that was a great age.
Loved it.
And kids at that age are just like,
it's
hysterical.
I said again, without being sappy, I mean, they're so genuine.
Yeah.
They're so spontaneous, And so I've been there since about March or April of '07. And after subbing like 2, 3, 4 days a week the first year, they have the paraprofessional program, the teacher's assistant.
Yeah.
And after a year or two of subbing and being in different rooms throughout the week, they asked me if I wanted to come in every day. I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I'm a paraprofessional now, or teacher's assistant at Allgrove.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, no, that's not, it's going to sound crude, but it's not a very well-paid position.
No.
I'm not saying that to knock it or anything. I'm just saying, I don't think people understand how. No, it isn't. It's not, you're in a situation where you have, I'm assuming you have some sort of pension, you have some, and your wife, and
you're right.
You can't really, that's not the type of job that you could afford to raise a family on.
No. I have the utmost respect for the people who do that, whether it be at the grade school, junior high, or high school level, where that is perhaps their only source of income, or most of their income.
Right.
I was looking for something to supplement retirement income.
Right.
So for me, I have absolutely no problem with the rate. But again, I have the respect for the people that do it as their whole source of income, because they work hard and they're dedicated. But no, you're right. It's not a job where you would think you're probably going to support a family on. For me, it's perfect.
There's got to be a dedication behind that. Otherwise, there's far more lucrative jobs you can get.
And there have been people doing that here in town for years and years, much longer than I have, who I just have the utmost respect for them.
So I guess the answer to the question would be that you would, with your magic wand, you would create support for that.
Yeah, and we all know that there's X amount of money and Y amount of programs.
Unlimited money for the school.
You're right. I'm like, I know the people.
That's what I said. That's why it's a magic wand.
When this show goes on, I'm sure there's going to be some people in town and say, "Well, I've heard that guy speak at some of these public functions. They're going to throw tomatoes at their TV." I said, "Well, go ahead, have at it."
Yeah, no.
But that's just me personally. Anything we can do to support our teachers, our pairs, and our buildings, and not just the school buildings, but all the buildings. I'm all for it. Absolutely.
That's our damn future. I mean, that's the way I was looking at it. It's like, where are we gonna? We're better.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I remember when the budget fights were going on the last 2 or 3 years here in town over schools. There was an article, I think it was maybe in the Granby News, and it said they interviewed 4 realtors individually, and they asked all 4 realtors, you as a realtor, what's the first question people ask when they come to your town? All 4 of them independently said, what are your schools like?
Right.
Because I have young children, and if your schools aren't good, I'm not moving to your town. So I say, well, there you have it. I mean, even if you're not
practical as well as a moral,
as a moral or a philosophical,
right?
I mean, I can get on my soapbox because I'm so pro-education. But the truth of the matter is, from a practical standpoint too, people aren't going to move to a town that doesn't have good schools.
And the converse is also true. Oftentimes people will move out of a town.
Absolutely.
Because they're not happy with the schools fit for their kids.
Definitely.
I mean, it's one of the driving forces.
Definitely.
Anyway, so what else did you do? I mean, you were in town here for years. Did you do anything else? Did you get involved with any other groups, or did you do anything that...
as far as the town groups, Mike, no, not that many.
Okay.
Or in fact, let's be honest, no, I really didn't. I didn't get involved with any of the other civic groups. Okay,
so to come full circle, I mean, where I met you was you stepped up to get involved with the advocating for the schools, and which actually makes it that much more remarkable, because a lot of us are doing 15 different things, but you actually came out of the woodwork just for that reason. You actually stepped up, and that's very unusual.
Yeah.
For somebody to get that motivated by something, and to actually come to meetings and spend time and take time out of their life to advocate for something, because very few people do that. I mean, they may feel it. I'm not taking anything. It's just not always everybody's personality, you know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the comment. It is one of those one or two things in my life that's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Education of our children, and to be honest, I'm just a huge fan of teachers. Right. I remember, I won't hopefully go on my high horse here.
No, it's your show. This is all about you.
But working up there now I'm in my 6th year. I just cringe every time I hear someone get up and say, "Oh, the teachers work a 7-hour day," and I want to just yell and scream. That's the 7 hours in the classroom.
Oh yeah.
The 5 hours that they put in either before school or after school to be able to do those 7 hours,
right,
is an ongoing thing, and that's not an exaggeration. I think it's a fair statement to say most of the teachers in this town put in anywhere from 11 to 13 hours a day.
I believe it.
A day.
Yeah.
And weekends, they're also working.
Right.
But I think Monday through Friday, these teachers are working 11 to 13 hours a day. And people that will say, well, it's a 7-hour, it's like you can just tell they've never been in the classroom, or they never make that
conception.
Comment. You know? I'm not asking everybody to agree with me, but if you're there and you see this and you know the hard work,
you're just testifying to what you see.
You know, I mean, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And they do. And I'm a fan, and they should be appropriately paid. And it goes beyond educating our kids. If you think about it, particularly at the elementary school level, our children are with their teachers more of their awake hours than they are with their parents.
Absolutely.
They're there, they get there at 8:20, they don't leave until 3:05. If a child is up after 9 o'clock in elementary school, you'd be surprised. 3:30 to 8:30, that's 5 hours.
What I notice, what I think is lacking, even beyond the financial standpoint, I'd like to see them have more respect.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's really what it comes down to. When you get somebody that's dedicated that much to the lives of children,
absolutely.
Another person could be a senior, but if it happens to be the children, but they're dedicated to those lives, they deserve the respect of the community. I don't think we hold them in as high a regard as we should.
Yeah, so, very good point.
Anyway, I got 2 more questions for you. One is, actually one, because we've covered most of it. If you were to give advice to a young person growing up today, say somebody who's about to graduate high school, it's a question I ask of every guest. What would that advice be?
Graduating from high school today?
Yeah, or a young adult. If you were with all your experience and your military career and your having raised children yourself, what would if you could give a 2-line or 3-line piece of advice to people, what would it be?
Yeah, pursue your dream.
Okay.
It goes. I used to laugh when people say it goes by quickly. Now I'm getting older, and it does.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if someone wants to be a electrician, someone wants to be a teacher, someone wants to be an artist, pursue that direction.
Right.
And if that means college for certain fields, if it means community college for another field, if it means technical school, get the appropriate training that would go with your dream and what you want to do, and pursue it. I said to my third son, Brendan, once, the artist, he bless his heart, he wavered on whether to do this graduate school program because he knew the job market and the chance of making money and supporting himself was not huge.
Right.
But I said to him, I said, Brendan, you don't. He's going to be 32 next month. I said,
right.
You don't want to wake up at 40 and say shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if that's what you want to do, you do it, and you'll find a way to pay your bills, which he is.
Right.
And then if you can break into the art field, even if you're a little bit older, so be it.
Right.
But I just say, to answer your question, Mike, pursue your dream.
Right.
If you get 75, 80 years on this earth and you don't want to look back and say, I didn't pursue what I really wanted to do, then that's a shame.
Right.
So
well, I'll tell you one thing that I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come in here with us tonight, but more importantly, I'm glad that you're teaching our kids and you're working with the kids.
Thank you. Believe me, I'm a small peg in that. The teachers deserve all the credit. I just ride on their coattails.
Yeah. But, well, you're not the guy.
But I enjoy it. The kids are a hoot. And I think I'm the lucky one getting to work with them and their teachers, believe me.
Well, whether you want the credit or not, I'm giving it to you. Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for joining us
My
here tonight.
pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We continue our series of interviews with seniors and not so seniors from East Granby and Heartland. And we thank you for joining us here tonight on GCTV, Cox Channel 16. You can also view this online, www.gctv16.org. and pull us up onto the program list. And thank you for your support. Thank you.